Imagine a world where you could walk from the South Pole to the equator without ever touching a drop of seawater. This is the world of 250 million years ago, a time when Earth's tectonic plates had finally locked together like a finished jigsaw puzzle. We call it Pangea, the whole Earth. As we begin our journey, look out over the horizon. There are no familiar coastlines here. The Atlantic Ocean doesn't exist. The Americas are fused tightly against Africa and Europe. This massive sea-shaped landmass is cradled by Panthalassa, a single, terrifyingly vast ocean that covers nearly 70% of the globe. To the east, the Tethys Ocean bites into the curve of the continent like a giant blue wedge, teeming with life that has no idea the world is about to change. The scale of this continent creates a climate of brutal extremes. Because the interior is thousands of miles from the cooling influence of the sea, the heart of Pangea is a furnace. Vast, rust-colored deserts stretch for 1,000 miles, where the wind carves dunes the size of mountains. In the summer, the heat is so intense it creates its own weather systems, colossal monsoons that batter the coasts but leave the inland parched and cracked. Yet life has found its footing in the margins. Along the river basins and the cooler southern reaches, the landscape isn't green with grass, which hasn't evolved yet, but with the hardy, tongue-shaped leaves of Glossopteris trees. These seed ferns form the first great forests of the world, shedding their leaves in the winter to create thick carpets of organic matter that will one day become the coal seams of the modern world. High above, the sky is a different shade of blue, filtered through an atmosphere with oxygen levels drifting lower than what we breathe today. There is a strange, heavy stillness to the air. The earth feels finished, settled, and ancient. But beneath this facade of continental stability, the deep earth is churning. The very forces that pushed these continents together are beginning to build a pressure that cannot be sustained. This is the peak of the Permian world, a golden age of terrestrial unity. It is a world of giants and strange shadows, seemingly invincible, unaware that the very ground they walk upon is a ticking bomb. In these 10 minutes, we witness the quiet before the greatest storm in the history of life.
Step off the baked plains of the interior and move toward the lush, fern-draped river basins of the southern latitudes. This is the world of the therapsids, the mammal-like reptiles. Long before the first dinosaur ever cracked an egg, these strange transitional pioneers were the undisputed masters of the Pangean landscape. If you were to stand in their presence, you would notice something unsettling. They don't move like modern lizards. Their legs are tucked beneath their bodies, giving them a powerful, purposeful stride. The undisputed king of this era is the Gorgonopsid. Imagine a predator the size of a grizzly bear, with a skull built for pure impact and 4-inch saber teeth designed to pierce the toughest hides. It is a terrifyingly efficient hunter, stalking through the low-lying Glossopteris groves with a predatory intelligence that foreshadows the big cats of the future. But the Gorgonopsid is just one part of a complex, vibrant ecosystem. Nearby, the ground trembles under the weight of the Paleozoics, massive, armored herbivores that look like living boulders covered in bony knobs.
They are slow and lumbering, filtering through the scrubland for vegetation. In the waterways, the dicynodonts, like the ubiquitous Listosaurus, use their turtle-like beaks to dig for roots and tubers. These creatures are the unsung heroes of the Permian. They are incredibly hardy, capable of surviving in oxygen-thin air and fluctuating temperatures that would kill most modern mammals. The air above is filled with the drone of giant insects, though they are shrinking from the monstrous sizes of the previous Carboniferous period. Below, in the vast Panthalassic Ocean, the waters teem with a final glorious display of Paleozoic life. Schools of bony fish dart through reefs built not just by coral, but by complex sponge communities. The iconic trilobites, having survived for nearly 300 million years, are still here, scuttling along the sea floor in their twilight hours. This is a world of biological firsts. We see the beginnings of social behavior, the first hints of fur or whiskers on some lineages, and the development of complex dental structures that allow for a varied diet. It is a sophisticated, functioning global machine. But as we watch these titans thrive, a shadow is falling over the northern horizon. The stability of the Permian is about to be shattered by a geological nightmare that no amount of evolutionary adaptation can prepare them for. The peace of the Permian world is not broken by a single explosion, but the ground itself tearing open. In what we now call Siberia, the Earth's crust begins to fracture. This is not a typical volcano with a single cone. These are massive fissure eruptions. For hundreds of thousands of years, molten rock, enough to bury the entire continental United States under a mile of basalt, pours out onto the surface. These are the Siberian Traps, the trigger for the most devastating biological catastrophe in the history of our planet. As the lava flows, it cuts through ancient, thick deposits of coal and carbonate rocks. The result is a chemical nightmare. Billions of tons of carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur dioxide are blasted into the atmosphere. The world begins to heat up with terrifying speed. Global temperatures soar by 10 degrees Celsius, turning the already hot Pangean interior into a wasteland where no complex life can survive. The sky turns a sickly, hazy yellow. Acid rain, as corrosive as diluted battery acid, falls from the clouds, stripping the leaves from the Glossopteris forests and poisoning the soil. As the trees die, the root systems that hold the earth together vanish, leading to massive global soil erosion that chokes the rivers and flows into the sea. But the true horror is happening beneath the waves. As the oceans absorb the excess carbon dioxide, they become acidic, dissolving the shells of corals and trilobites. The rising heat strips the water of its oxygen. Deep-seated currents stall, and the stagnant oceans become a breeding ground for anaerobic bacteria that belch toxic hydrogen sulfide gas into the air. This is the Great Dying. It is a biological bottleneck that almost ends the story of life on Earth. In the forests, the Gorgonopsids gasp for air as the oxygen levels plummet. In the seas, the once vibrant reefs become silent graveyards. By the time the eruptions finally slow, 95% of all marine species and 70% of all land-dwelling vertebrates have been wiped out. The fossil record goes nearly silent. The Earth is a charred, suffocating ruin, and for a long time it remains a world of ghosts, waiting to see if anything at all has the strength to begin again. The silence that follows the great dying is heavy, suffocating, and absolute. As we move into this 10-minute segment, we are witnessing the immediate aftermath of the apocalypse, a period known as the post-extinction stasis. The world is no longer the vibrant, unified Pangea of the previous chapters. It has become a disaster zone on a planetary scale. The lush forests are gone, replaced by vast stretches of rotting wood and fungal blooms that feed on the remains of a biosphere. In this grim landscape, the survivors are not the mighty or the specialized, but the disaster taxa, the hardy generalists who can endure the unendurable. The most famous of these is Lystrosaurus. Imagine a creature the size of a pig with a barrel chest, a down-turned beak, and a relentless will to live. While its more majestic cousins perished, Lystrosaurus thrived because it was a burrower. It could retreat underground to escape the searing heat and the toxic oxygen-thin air of the surface. For millions of years, this single genus accounts for nearly 90% of all land-dwelling vertebrates on Earth. It is a lonely existence, a world populated by a single face, repeated over every horizon from the poles to the equator. The oceans are even more desolate. The vibrant reefs of the Permian have collapsed into mounds of lime and silt. We enter what geologists call the coal gap, a period of nearly 10 million years where no coal was formed because there were simply not enough trees left on the planet to create peat. The hydrologic cycle is broken. Without forests to regulate rainfall, massive flash floods scour the barren earth, dumping sediment into stagnant, overheated seas that remain choked with hydrogen sulfide. This is a world in a state of biological suspension. Evolution hasn't stopped, but it has slowed to a crawl. The planet is too unstable for new, complex lineages to take root. Every time life tries to bounce back, a new pulse of heat or a spike in ocean acidity knocks it back down. We see the first Lilliput effect, where the surviving species are significantly smaller than their ancestors, a desperate evolutionary strategy to survive on dwindling resources. Yet, in this desolation, the seeds of the future are being sown. Deep in the shadows, small, scurrying cynodonts, the ancestors of mammals, are refining their ability to regulate body temperature. In the waterways, the first archosaurs are developing a more efficient way of breathing. They are the ghost lineages, waiting for the environment to stabilize. This chapter is a testament to the sheer resilience of life. It is the story of a planet that refused to die, holding its breath in the dark, waiting for the fever to finally break. The fever that gripped the planet for millions of years finally begins to break. As we enter the final minutes of our journey, 250 million years ago has blurred into the early Triassic. The Earth is still hot, and Pangea remains a singular massive landmass, but the chemical lethality of the atmosphere is fading. The Great Dying has passed into geological history, leaving behind a blank canvas, a biological vacuum that the survivors are now rushing to fill. This is the dawn of a new era, a transition from the ancient Paleozoic to the Mesozoic, the middle life of our world. The landscape is changing. Along the coastlines and river valleys, the first true conifers and cycads are taking root, replacing the lost Glossopterids. These plants are tougher, built to withstand the erratic rainfall of the Triassic. As the greenery returns, so does the complexity of the food chain. The Lystrosaurus, which once ruled a lonely world, now finds itself surrounded by new neighbors. Among the low-lying ferns, we see the first cynodonts, small, bristly creatures that are beginning to look remarkably like mammals. They are developing whiskers, specialized teeth, and perhaps even the very first patches of fur to protect them from the nocturnal chill of the desert nights. But the most significant shift is happening among the reptiles. A new group, the archosaurs, is rising to dominance. They have a secret weapon, an efficient bird-like respiratory system that allows them to thrive in the still thin oxygen of the Triassic. Among them is Proterosuchus, a crocodile-like predator that signals the return of the giants. More importantly, we see the arrival of Euparkeria, a small, agile reptile that can run on two legs. This tiny, unassuming creature is the blueprint for the most famous dynasty in Earth's history. From this lineage, the very first dinosaurs will emerge. The oceans, too, are being reclaimed. While the trilobites are gone forever, new predators like the long-necked plesiosaurs and the dolphin-shaped ichthyosaurs are beginning their journey from the land back into the sea. The modern world is starting to take shape in the wreckage of the old. The extinction didn't just kill, it selected. It cleared the stage of the slow and the old, making room for the fast, the warm-blooded, and the innovative. As our journey concludes, we look out over a Pangea that is starting to show the first cracks of its eventual breakup. The Great Dying was a baptism by fire that nearly extinguished the flame of life, but instead it forged a more resilient biological world. The dinosaurs are coming, the mammals are waiting in the shadows, and the Earth is preparing for a reign of giants that will last for another 180 million years. The story of 250 million years ago is not a story of an end, but of the most spectacular new beginning in the history of the universe.